It's one time in our lives where we actually thought that we were going to get a big spending cut in a meaningful way. Now, this battle is playing out in three phases. It begins with Elon Musk airing his disappointments in the lack of spending cuts in the big, beautiful bill. Let's watch.
I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, everything he's done on DOGE gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both. My personal opinion.
Well, then last night, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller took to X to try and clean some things up. He wrote the big, beautiful bill. It's not an annual budget bill, so DOGE cuts would actually have to be done through an appropriations bill. Now, that all makes sense. Today, we get word from Politico that the White House will send several DOGE cut requests to the House GOP next week amid an online pressure campaign. So they are listening. Let's see if our DC insider Chris Bedford is listening. Do you hear all of the talk out there that's happening? Where does the spending battle go from here, Chris?
Well, still the White House's focus is going to be entirely on reconciliation. That's where the administration's agenda lies. That's where their ability to do all the different things that they actually campaigned on lie. Now, the massive cuts to the federal government, which has been something that we've been promised by Republican politicians since, I guarantee you, every person on here and every person who's watching was born without ever actually seeing them delivered. Well, that's another matter entirely. The rescissions practice that Stephen Miller is talking about is a good one. That's one that would allow the Senate to be able to reclaim money that it has appropriated. So discretionary spending, to take that back with just 51 votes. Of course, those 51 votes would have to include the former leader, Mitch McConnell. They would have to include Murkowski. They would have to include Collins. They'd have to include Tillis. They'd have to include any other range of completely and totally squishy Republicans who don't actually want to see anything done on this. And, if you question the authenticity of politicians, take a look at the fact that we've been promised this. Take a look at the fact that some of us grew up reading Barry Goldwater and other people grew up reading Ron Paul. And none of those ideas have actually really been executed on, aside from the foreign policy of Goldwater we saw with Reagan. None of the domestic stuff has really been capitalized on as far as the deficit goes. You have seen the changing of the civil rights architecture used to actually attack opponents of freedom and attack the opponents of the left under the Trump administration to defend Christianity and other persecuted religions. That's all great. That's actually what I think the president ran on. But this would be the first time you start to see real and meaningful cuts. I mean, if you want to be blackpilled on the subject, keep in mind how long the Department of Defense has been legally mandated to submit to an audit. Well over a decade, but it's never happened. And no one in the Hill actually wants it to happen, except for a few backbenchers. So it doesn't. But if you get Elon Musk, who, despite rumors, is not withdrawing from politics, he's just not going to be full-time in Washington, D.C., if you get the online interest and the grassroots interest that has been sparked for the first time since the Tea Party by Musk's efforts and others' efforts, by Russ Vought's efforts, by what Trump has done with the Department of Education and other places, and especially USAID, you combine all that, you can actually create enough pressure on these people, some of whom are actually up for re-election this year. Some people, like Tom Tillis, have to face a primary early next year. They're susceptible to pressure. And that would be an excellent thing to see this stuff actually codified. Of course, in reconciliation, it's just not really a possibility. There are too many people you need to please with too many important aspects of the agenda that the administration campaigned on that is actually pushing. And at the same time, it's not allowed to touch that non-discretionary spend, that discretionary spending, that Musk was cutting. It has to deal entirely with the non-discretionary. So that means the stuff that Congress no longer, or the executive no longer really has that privilege over overseeing, the stuff that's baked in. And that's where we are. I'm hopeful. Courage is contagious. There's a mass movement of people and online autists and the rest who are really paying attention to this, who are doing great work, some of whom have been on this program, figuring out exactly what's going on. And, just keep in mind as one lasting thing, Democrats are going to try and push that this is really insensitive, that this is an attack on the American people, that this is an attack on democracy. But this money is not going to the American people. You're very rarely seeing the actual benefits of this. And when you are, you're not seeing 1/10 of the money that was actually put into it. This is corruption. It's corruption in Washington. It's jobs programs for friends and allies and family. This is corruption of the highest order. You don't get to this high in debt spending it on actually useful programs without having some kind of socialist paradise. It's completely insane. So this is a good thing for the Senate to tackle, the House of Representatives to tackle, and a good thing, I think, for the country.
So you mentioned the authenticity of politicians. The squishies on the right talk about, all Republicans talk about spending cuts and getting the budget in line and the debt in line, and they've done that for decades. So you're questioning their authenticity. The authenticity that I don't question in this equation is that of Mr. Elon Musk. I mean, I think what we're seeing from him is actually really authentic. And it's the disenchantment of many a soul who has tried to change Washington, D.C. When he said Bill can either probably only be big or beautiful, I think there's a lot of truth to that as well, right? I mean, if a bill is big, it's not going to be beautiful. It's going to have to be a compromise with a ton of mishmash in it. So here's the problem. We need Musk to not walk away. I don't think he will, and I know you don't either. But if you were advising Elon Musk right now and trying to talk him off the ledge and how he should think about this and what he should do, what would you tell him?
I would tell him that what we kind of just talked about, the difference between that discretionary and non-discretionary, which I do believe he completely and totally understands. He's smarter than I am. I would talk to him about the importance of what the president actually campaigned on, which has not been something that Musk has ever really paid that close attention to. He likes to push back against the social value insanity and the complete and total inquisition that was launched by the left over the last 8 years. He liked that. But from the first time he really started to appear on the campaign trail, and then later at Mar-a-Lago with President-elect Trump, he would repeat over and over again to anyone who would listen, we must be radicals for limited government. Now, love Donald Trump or dislike him, he's not a Ron Paul figure, except in that he's an outsider and a revolutionary of sorts. He didn't actually come to Washington to radically limit government. He's down for it. He likes it. He thinks that these are organs, essentially, the Democratic Party. But he needs this other money to be able to get through. Now, Elon Musk is probably disenfranchised a little bit because, or not disenfranchised, but he's feeling down because he's discovered what so many people, from Mr. Smith to Charles Koch to whoever who came to Washington to try and change things, who just assumed that the city simply wanted to do good, but didn't know how to. And if only they had someone from private business who was really intelligent and forward-looking, then they could make these cuts. That if only they had the tools and they felt the courage and they had the right people around them, that they could restrain government. The problem is, and I think he's realized this, and so many people have realized it before, is that that's not what people in Washington want to do. They want to stay elected. They want to spend money they didn't work for. They want to get rich on stock markets. They want to get reelected. I think I've mentioned that already, but it's important because that's really one of their main things is staying in power, which is why so many of them seem to die while in office. That's their focus. So what you need with these folks is not simply going to be, all right, I'm offering you a carrot. You need to play hardball. So Musk needs to talk about things like, well, I'm going to bring primary money to bear. I'm going to go after senators who aren't pushing what I consider the Republican agenda. I'm going to go after those people who can't seem to find a cut anywhere. I'm going to go after those senators who say we can't possibly return to pre-COVID spending levels. Please, those people have to be high on his target list because what's going to move them is money being spent against them in their races. Now, that's the sort of thing that's going to make Republicans come out and openly attack and criticize Musk. Well, they've simply been quietly grumbling to reporters and grumbling to each other about how he's put them in an awkward position. That can get messy, but that's one of the ways that you actually shape the GOP.
Well, you don't have to be Elon Musk to be smarter than James Comey. Just about anybody out there in the country is, especially when he goes out and he tells us, oh yeah, those seashells that I saw on the beach, they were the 8647. I thought it was cute, so I took a picture, right? This is the former FBI director. This is what he wants us to believe. But he didn't stop there. We need to believe him when he tells us about what he thinks about Republicans. Let's watch.
Is the law enforcement system and the legal system equipped to deal with what we're seeing now?
Probably there could be changes at the margins, but in the main, we have the tools. There are cultural impediments to doing this work. Let's say you work in the FBI. You know that one of the two political parties is, let me put it nicely, white supremacist adjacent at a minimum. And so why would you want to throw your career on that side of the line and be summoned to Capitol Hill to be asked, why are you pursuing these innocent groups? And so we have a cultural impediment to working it effectively that should get more attention than it does.
Why should you be the former FBI director and going on television just months after you're no longer in this job and feel free to go out there and just say, oh, that other political party, they're white supremacist adjacent, Bedford?
Well, and do so on a leading mouthpiece and known liar for the last administration, who has since been disgraced for the complete and total cover-up that she was the face of the president's soup brain. This is really bad optics, but it's just another example of something that we've talked about. I love it. This should be open. This should be conversation. The left should admit freely, I think you're a Nazi. I'm a director of the FBI who persecuted the president, who undermined presidents I don't agree with, who operated as a deep state or sort of shadow government. I am old enough to remember a time where Republican senators and Republican congressmen claimed that James Comey was above reproach. How dare you criticize him? If you to criticize James Comey and the FBI in Washington, D.C., is to criticize the people who brought down Bonnie and Clyde. It's to criticize the guy with the badge who's taking shots in the street from the burglar, the person who goes in to break up domestic assaults, the person who frees child sex slaves. That's how it got portrayed. And when Donald Trump first ran for office, you would still have arguments around the dinner table at family gatherings about whether or not the media was biased. All of that's out the window. Nobody's pretending the Green New Deal is about the environment. They're openly admitting it's about economics. We don't have to claim it anymore in the pages of the Blaze or the pages of the Daily Caller because the Democrats will just say it. You don't have to say that the FBI director secretly thinks that you're a scumbag or that you're a knuckle-dragging Klansman, because he'll come out and say it openly. And that is just wonderful. There's no more argument about the existence of a deep state. There's no more argument about the corruption at the FBI. There's no more argument about the complete and total disdain that the elites of the United States hold us in, because it's open now. And that courage is great. Come out there and say it, and let the American people actually make a decision based on what they see, what they hear, and how they feel.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. Comey is the ultimate figure for what you're talking about, for that reduction to the absurd of this sort of normie-con establishment, we respect the institutions deal, because he was the one, as you say, I just want to highlight, he was the one people would say, well, look at him. He's a good guy. He's actually on your side. How dare you do anything? And the FBI stood for exactly what you're talking about in everyone's mind, to be fair, right? Until this happened. But it's a great point that those remarks reveal all.
The masks are off. Go ahead, Bedford.
Well, thank you, guys. I absolutely. And you know what? No, I don't feel like anyone's giving you quite the credit yet, Miss Savage, from Musk Watch TV.
Oh, thank you.
That was a humdinger. That was great.
Thank you. You know what? I expect a humdinger out of you tomorrow when we see you back here.